Don't squat until you've got this straightened out. Now, I'm not saying don't squat because you're going to die or going to get injured if you don't get this straightened out, but I'm talking about don't squat because of efficiency, right? Purposes of efficiency. Every time we perform a rep of something, whether we mean to or not, we are practicing that thing. So let's practice it correctly so we can ingrain the most efficient motor pattern possible. The concept we're covering today is quite literally foundational to your squat. We're going to cover it real quick because there's some work going on in the bay next door, and I don't know how well the audio on this thing is going to turn out. So let's cover it quick. Let's stick to the basics. What we're talking about specifically is your stance. And we're going to cover 4 things about your stance. Stick around for number 4, not because it's the most counterintuitive, because it is not, but it is very often simply forgotten about. Number 1, the width of your stance. You're simply going to take a stance with your heels at roughly shoulder width. Too wide of a stance makes depth difficult to achieve. Too narrow of a stance also has the same problem. So simply take what we would consider a moderate width stance, heels at about shoulder width. Number 2, toe angle. You're going to point your toes out at roughly 30 degrees, 30, 35 degrees, something like that. Remember, your toes are going to be arrows for your knees. A significant chunk of squatting is simply performing the game of geometry, the game of anthropometry with your own body, trying to get segments and joints out of the way so that you can achieve depth, right? So you're going to point your knees, you're going to shove your knees apart. Yes, they're going to go forward, they're going to go in the direction of your toes, but they're also going to go apart, and your hips are going to go back. And you're going to point your chest down at the floor. You're playing that game of geometry. Because your knees are not only going to go straight ahead, but also out, you want your toes pointed in that same direction so there's no twisting effect on the knee. Number 3, speaking of foundations, we're talking about your stance here. So what are you taking your stance upon? Hopefully you've got a fairly solid platform, or at least a fairly solid floor to lift upon, but what are you taking your stance in, right? I'm talking about your shoes here. So my basic recommendation is wear lifting shoes. Not because of the heel, although yes, that's useful for squatting. Not even because of the Velcro straps, although yes, that is also useful. Kind of acts like a belt for your foot. It gathers the foot together, provides additional support, but the most important feature is the rigid, non-compressible sole, so that you've got efficient force transfer between you and the floor. Can you squat in something squishy like a Chuck Taylor or a walking shoe or a running shoe? Absolutely. And if you don't have anything else to squat in, yeah, go ahead and squat in regular shoes. But if you can get access to lifting shoes, and most people can, then go out and get yourself a pair of lifting shoes. We'll link to some options below. Don't squat barefoot. Yes, of course you can squat barefoot, but there are a whole lot of other options out there. You can eat raw meat, but a long time ago, technology made some really big strides forward with the advent of fire. Someone else invented lifting shoes. I'd recommend using them. And number 4, this is the one that people don't often think about, and this is simply your distance from the rack. Now, obviously, if you're squatting inside a power cage, this probably is not going to be a problem for you. You're simply limited by the depth of the cage. However, there are some really big power cages out there that are like 4 feet deep. You don't need to stand in the middle of that thing. There is no need to back out any further. This is obviously true in a squat stand like what I'm standing at here, where the spotter arms only extend so far, but there's no reason to back out more than about the length of 1 step. So simply take 1 step back with your right foot, 1 step back with your left foot, and then adjust your stance accordingly. It'll take you maybe a couple seconds, and then you're ready to squat. You don't need to back a mile out. The longer you back out with a heavy weight, you're expending more energy, and then at the end of that set, when you're tired, when you're exhausted, now you've got to take the weight back to the rack as well. So be efficient. 1 step back with the right, 1 step back with your left. Figure out your stance from there. You're good to go. As always, we hope these tips help you get stronger and live better.